Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, and I share my creative process here with you on the internet. If you'd like to support this channel, get additional bonus live streams, see my comic artwork before anybody else, you can support this channel at patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get the best of my social media posts, see GIFs, see artwork that I share throughout the week on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, what have you, you can get it all delivered to your inbox if chasing me all over the internet. You can go to newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my books, if you read on Amazon Kindle or Comixology, if you read digitally, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That will forward you to my author page. And we have guests. Let me pull my screen down from here. And, I've never seen this layout before. It's 3 bars going down. They give us a weird layout. So, we have the Artcasters, Scott Serkland, Joshua Kemble. Let me see. Oh, there we go. It was user error.
This seems familiar from a few weeks ago.
You know what? Let's not call it a comeback. We've been here for years.
Yeah.
So, friends I've known online for many years. I've seen Scott at various conventions in Arizona over the years. And Josh, I've been a fan of him going back to Big Illustration Party Time. They run the channel Artcasters, which discusses topics, creative process, art business, the comic creation, art creation, and their show, the Artcasters, alternates between their 2 YouTube channels, and there are links in the description. So if you want to subscribe to their channels, you can check out episodes. They alternate one week Scott's channel, 1 week Josh's channel, and if you want to never miss an episode, they have a newsletter which they post when they're going live. That link is also in the chat. So you should definitely check it out. I'm a big fan of their show. Highly recommend it. So Scott, Josh, how are you both doing? What are you up to? Let's start with Scott, just because you're in the order of the screen here.
I'm doing pretty good. I'm working through the weekend as usual. So actually, that's not entirely true. Lately, I've been kind of relaxed a little bit on the weekends. Last weekend I was out of town. Was it last weekend? I think it was last weekend I was out of town. So, but yeah, trying to catch up on some stuff. I've been doing a lot of like coloring books and things like that, and I've got some that like right now I'm working on one that's for Halloween. So I kind of behind on that. Got to get that up. But other than that, always doing YouTube content and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I've been working on.
And Josh, what are you up to? What's on your creative plate right now? I know we discussed briefly the last time we were talking on your channel, but
nice. So I'm basically today working on thumbnails for the second quarterly stories book, which will be like quarterly, but 2. While the first one's being shopped around by my lit agent, I figure I should get progress on that. So I'll be working on like thumbnails for page 24. And then also, if time allows, I have some revisions to do for a client on a t-shirt job where it's like I have to change some like costumes and stuff like that for the character. So that's what I'm working on today. And like Scott was saying, pretty typical weekend. I mean, I think most of us kind of do this, 7 days a week. So yeah.
Yeah. I would really love having a day, not just my days off from work, but to have a day off from everything creative, because I don't think I do a good enough job recharging the creative well on a regular basis. I see a couple of folks in the chat here already. I see my boy Negro Frazetta's in the chat. He says, "What's up?" See, Amaris is in the chat. She says she's sorry she's been around. She's dealing with personal issues. Well, you know what? Deal with your personal issues. I'm here for you. We're here for you. So please be healthy. Take care of all the stuff you need to do. But she says, I'm back and ready to learn. So good. I'm hopefully will be useful and enlightening. If anybody else has any questions or comments, please feel free to throw them in there. Yeah, you know, that like recharging the creative well is something that I don't do enough, but I've been trying to get back into the habit of reading for like a half hour every night before bed, and trying to alternate between reading comics, reading like a nonfiction educational book, and then just reading fiction for pleasure. So I try to rotate through that.
Yeah. That's a good way to do it. I've been burning through Dune, the series Dune. So I'm on like after Dune Messiah, and now I'm reading Children of Dune, which admittedly they get like the quality kind of decreases in each book, but it's still super fun. And part of why I started doing like fantasy books was because I tend to read a lot of books that are like management tips and management advice, or like art related stuff, or just like politically related stuff. And I realized like I need to enjoy some fiction, because just 2020 is pretty heavy, and so it's nice to have like a little escapism thrown in there. So yeah, but I hear you on the recharging. That's something I forget often to do, is like to try to have like a day out of the week that's just rest and that's it. I think that would actually be probably a good idea. Although honestly, I usually won't listen to my own advice and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I actually wish that I did listen more to like I've got a bunch of business and self-help books. Like I have right now, I'm listening to Cal Newport's Deep Work.
Nice.
And what's crazy is I had listened to it in the past. I bought it on Audible, and I had forgotten that I had already listened to it. Like I was like, wait, what is this? Why does it say finish? And I realized, oh, okay. Once I started listening, it was one of those things where it's in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
It's on my list of, I should. Hearing other people talk about what they're getting done and productivity made me think, I should listen to that book. I know that I own it. And then once I started listening to it, I was like, I already finished it. But obviously, none of the lessons sunk in if I can't even remember.
Yeah.
I have to read books a number of times before certain things might sink in, but I forget things, and hopefully subconsciously it's in there somewhere in my back of my head. So if I need it, I can pull it out. But like, it's even that way with like movies or anything. People will mention something about a movie I saw, and it's hard for me to recount what it was about. So yeah, but I've heard that. Yeah, I've definitely have had that recommend for the Deep Work, and I haven't read it, so that's probably something I should dive into, because so many people have recommended that book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the first half is more tactic and productivity, like ways to approach it. But in the end, it comes down to the title kind of covers what the main idea is, which is blocking out chunks of time so you can actually focus, and not be interrupted. Because that whole multitasking, task switching can actually be really disruptive to your creative flow. But see, the interesting thing is my personal creative process has been it's been shaped by being a professional creative, in that we never have enough time to do the things we need. So I started changing my whole creative process such that if I only have a half hour to work on this, or an hour to work on that, then it's set up so that I don't have to do the whole breakdown setup thing. It's very easy for me to drop into my projects.
Yeah.
That said, it's like I can see I had to set it up so that I could do the multitasking, even though it wasn't what I wanted, because I realized, how often do you have 2 hours or 3 hours of uninterrupted time?
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. Like for me, like with my son's 6, so it's like that window that used to exist, it's like it just doesn't. Like there is no uninterrupted time. So
exactly.
So like I think that's a great thing to kind of like make time and actively try to make a space so that you can just instantly drop in.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I'm trying right now with like book 1 of Quarterly Stories, I sort of arrange things differently in that like I fully scripted chapters, and so I had like my story arc worked out, like broad story arc, including the second book, right? Like I knew all the story points, but I didn't get into the meticulous writing of each chapter until before the chapter. So then I'd write the chapter, I'd thumbnail a page at a time, and then I'd go to pencils, inks, and I created this like workflow that I could just kind of sit in, but it had enough variety to keep me interested. And this second book, I'm trying a different approach, which is to batch the entire process. So what I've done is like I've scripted the entire book, and then gone through the revisions of the scripts, like through having editors and my lit agent, and then like friends, trusted sources, and stuff, like look through it. And now that I've got that done, I'm batching the entire thumbnails, and then I'm going to try to see if I can batch all the layout and the type roughs, batch all the photo reference gathering. I'm going to try to just do it like for the whole book, like one little section at a time, which I've never really done before. On a professional project, for sure, I've done that. On personal projects, I've never actually done that, like thumbnailed an entire. I've done that with short stories, but not with like a long, graphic novel length like book. And so far, it's pretty interesting because for what you're talking about, that like ability to just kind of come in and just be in the zone, it does help because I'm not paying a task switching penalty on the process I'm doing. Like when I get home, it's like I know I need to do a thumbnail, and a decent thumbnail. Like I'm doing tight thumbnail, but it's like that's all I need to do. And then once I'm through the 130 thumbnail pages, then I'll know what my next task is. So like I'm hoping that improves productivity, but it might slow it down. I don't know. But I'm always interested in trying to find ways to kind of organize the workflow, so I'm being a good art director to myself. Because I have to art direct at work, and like a huge thing as an art director is proper delegation of tasks, making sure resources are available, and then one of the biggest things is just like organizing workflow. So that there's like the least amount of task switching penalties like for your staff as possible with and anyone who's worked graphic design or illustration in-house, like inevitably the name of the game is like rush. Everything's rush. You never have time. And you switch all the time. Like you're gonna be switching tasks all the time. So as an art director, it's like for my staff, I make a conscious effort to try to keep them in the zone, and yet like I find that often for myself that can be a real struggle. So I'm trying to kind of get better, be a better art director to myself, like with that kind of thing. I don't know, like Scott, when you're working on like Young and the Dead, do you have do you do that, like the batching, like
Yeah, I mean, I usually do write the script and everything. I find that I was going to say I'm a big proponent of batching tasks and everything, not just with the comics, but like YouTube. I try to, it makes a lot more sense that if you're going to produce some YouTube content, try to do like 2 or 3 videos at a time. Because you're already there, you've already got the camera set up, so that's, and then it's a good feeling to have some of those in the can, like the video that's going to go up on Tuesday. It's been done for a couple weeks now, so I'm just a big fan of, because you get yourself in the zone if you're constantly switching from one thing to another. I do that with pretty much everything. I try to take all the similar tasks and put them together, because like even if you're just working in one program, and then you're switching to another program, I mean, sometimes that can vary. So like with, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example, but it's all, yeah, I mean, I do that all the time. And that's one of the biggest things that I would recommend is like, do your, whatever, you're writing first, do your sketching first, your drawing. But then also I do like to switch around because I get bored. So it's a balancing act that way. Like if I just focus on one project, and this, again, I'm working on my own stuff. So if you're working for a client, it's a little different because you have to organize that by when it's due, priority wise, all that kind of stuff. With my stuff, I can have a little more leeway. So, if I get bored of, say, doing a coloring book, I'll switch over to do YouTube. But, also keeping in mind, when I need to put things out, there's still, even if I'm working for myself, there's still time sensitive stuff like this thing I'm working on right now, where I got to get it up so that it, it's ready for Halloween and all that kind of stuff. So
I like that. Cool. Jeremy, do you like, how do you kind of deal with the task switching, like penalties, like?
Well, see, that's a new thing for me because in the past, I have generally been, the way I deal with it is by being laser focused. Day job and my comic. And literally there was nothing else. There was a day job, there was comic, and then there was my family time, my family obligations. But in recent months and recent years, I've been re-examining my creative business in the sense that, like, on Patreon, I'm doing more tutorial work and sort of like working through. It's almost like, as opposed to being a teacher, it's almost like being a TA. Looking at, like, part of it is me sharing my internal process of how I study as an artist. So me doing my own personal figure drawing studies and sharing that. Then me sharing how I go and break those down and look for flaws. Nice. Me sharing, like, I'll do videos. I have a thing on there that I call the art book study group, where I just take an art book that I have not finished, like, reading yet. I sit on my desk, I open it, and I'm all, this is how I learn these things. I copy the drawings, not to do a replica of what's on the page, but like a mosquito trying to stick your sticker in there and just slurp the knowledge out. And things like that, where I'm adding new things to my day-to-day task. And so, I mean, it's interesting to me in that now I am being forced to deal with these things that I've avoided them for years, because earlier in my career, I think I found the same problem that most freelancers have, which is the constant juggling and chasing new gigs. And between the two, you go nuts.
Oh, yeah.
And I found that when possible, having I think that I've known freelancers that were much more financially successful than I was. Yeah. But they just had a really great hustle. They not hustle in terms of scam, but hustle in terms of getting on your feet, hunting down the gigs, letting people know what you got coming along, promoting yourself. That's what I mean by hustle. Positive hustle. Yeah. Gary Vaynerchuk hustle, not scammer hustle.
I like that. But I think that's important to, like, kind of mention, because it's like one of the things, like it or not, that, like, kind of helped me when I first just kind of jumped off a cliff and went freelance, and I managed to maintain it for a good 15 years before going to becoming a full-time art director. But one of the things that kept me with steady work was exactly what you described. Instead of waiting for people to kind of find my work, or like relying on other people or word of mouth, which are all really good things. Mm-hmm. I would just shamelessly self-promote, like, nonstop. And it can be exhausting, but I would send query emails to, inquiry letters to, like, different art directors, like, all the time. I made it a habit. So it was like, between jobs, I had this, like, at certain points, I had, like, a cap limit where I was like, I have to send out at least 5 queries a day. I have to send, 2 follow-ups a day. So I blocked out, like, an hour a day just to focus on that, like, just hustling. And I don't think that's dishonest. I think that's just kind of how it goes. Like, if you're, relying on steady freelance for your living, and that's your main hustle. It's like, you have to kind of almost like be your own marketing. I mean, Scott's in it right now, so you can probably speak more to it because he's like directly in like full-time freelance and full-time like actually promoting his own work and his own creator-owned stuff, and kind of that's what Scott's like basis of living right now is, which is incredible. But it's like you have to be your own marketing department, your own sales department, your own finance department, like all the different branches that are out of business. You have to kind of block out time for, and part of that's marketing, and a big part of marketing is just tapping on someone's shoulder, reminding them that you exist and that you make a good product. But that's always been my least favorite part of art. But like, I guess for better or worse, like, I think because I had some mentors early on who kind of told me that, like, they were really talented. So I was like, oh, they must not have to like hunt for work. And they were like, no, if you go full freelance, like you're going to be hunting. Like you have to hunt, you have to be shameless about your self-promotion. Like, and there's a line between shameless and annoying, but you know what I mean? Like it's, I think I agree with that because I do find I did find, especially at that time when I was really in it, that I would get more work than a lot of friends of mine who were like way more talented, and it was just because I wasn't ashamed to like email a company I wanted to work for and be like, dude, I want to work for you guys. Can you check out my portfolio? Do you have any work? Like.
Yeah, you got to ask.
Yeah, and weirdly enough, like a lot of people would just kind of be like, "Well, I'll make the good work, and then people will come to me," and that's a good approach too. But why not both? Like I think both is good because I do think a lot of people have like a waiting room approach. Art or with we talked a bit about this when we had you on Artcasters with waiting for the opportunity, like for somebody to sign off and be like, you can make comics, like maybe they're waiting for like Marvel to be like, congratulations, you're a cartoonist. But I think like a lot of the time, if you're sitting in a waiting room, it may just never happen. And so for me, I'd like rather, take the tack of just like doing everything within my power to try to make it happen. And that on top of just getting better as an artist, which just should be like a no-brainer for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge one. I think just kind of advocating self-promoting. I think a lot of what Scott's doing too, like with like his YouTube channel and with like digital products, and then promoting those digital products. I think a lot of that could be really helpful and inspiring for people who are like kind of might be stuck in that wait process where I don't know if that makes sense. But.
Well, no, I mean that makes complete sense because that was exactly the next comment that I was thinking was that the other huge shift that I'm going through mentally is realizing, okay, that hustle that one has for the day job or for the freelance work, that we often don't necessarily have enough juice left in the tank to even work on personal creative products at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I realize my personal work hasn't been nearly as profitable as I'd want it to be, in spite of people encouraging me that the work itself is good.
Yeah.
But that it's still not hitting the numbers of sales that one would like.
Yeah.
And whenever we get talking to sales, like artists start cringing because like, it's a dirty word. It's like, no, I want people to buy my stuff. I want to roll around in bags of money like Scrooge McDuck. Artist. I want that. And I'm not ashamed of it. But the thing I've realized... Huh?
I said, I'm not either. Yeah. You got to get over that.
Exactly. But the thing I realized is that up until now, I have not been putting the same level of hustle into selling my own work that I would put into selling myself to a corporation for a job.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, It's funny. So we also do like Scott and I both do this thing called the 48-hour art check with Corey Kerr.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually something Corey, Scott, and I talk about a lot, which is on that show I've talked about, which is it's like an accountability, but an accountability buddy show.
Yeah.
Where it's a bunch of artists just kind of holding each other accountable on our personal projects. And that was one of the big ones, is like, it's really hard to start promoting your work as if you're promoting it for a client. Like, if I had to market a product for a client, like, I know a ton about marketing that I don't actually employ in my own personal work, but I totally do for clients and for money. And it's interesting because it's like we should be like our favorite client when it comes to marketing. And like, often we want to kind of do the work because that's fun. And then we just kind of are a really bad marketing client for ourselves, you know? And it's, I struggle with a lot, where it's like, I'm working on like a weird auto-bio comic that is kind of hard to market. And that's kind of out of, preference for that genre, even though it's really hard to push memoir unless you're, like if you're John Lewis, who wrote brilliant, memoir graphic novels, it makes sense there's going to be a market for it. You're, notoriously famous at that point. And so like the market's there, so it's just about making the book. But if you're kind of an unknown writing memoir, it's a hard push to do. But do I treat my own memoir like I would were I hired to promote it? And that's a question I can honestly answer that I don't. And I do try to kind of, that's an interesting thought to go through, because it's like you said, you're kind of burnt out and tired from the day job of doing art all day and having to deal with the marketing facets for larger clients. That I think there might be like some kind of sense of relief of of being able to just focus on the art when it comes to personal projects. But along with that, like, are we missing out on massive streams of potential income? And seeing like Scott like really hit the marketing on personal work has been really inspiring for me, because it's starting to bear fruit, and that's cool to see. Where it's like he doesn't have to hunt for clients as often because he's starting to make up for that with like passive income, and that's a good. It's cool to see that kind of start to work. I'm rambling, but.
Scott, I mean, the fact that you have been on the hustle for marketing your own creative products, you're creating products that are either content for creatives or things that use your own skill set, but making things like the Pug book, making things adult coloring books, things where your skill set, you're applying it to products that there's a market for, an existing market, but with your own style, with your own flavor, and bring your own twist. What is the number one marketing advice that you'd say if you're telling other creatives that are trying to produce their own work and boost it like that? What's the number one thing you say, you got to start doing this? What's the thing you advice you give to other creatives?
Okay, I'm going to kind of cheat, and I'm going to give you two things, because what I'm doing right now, it's sort of in two different areas. One requires you to sort of build a brand. One doesn't require you to build a brand. It's not even something that you even advertise really to the public. So the brand part of it, if you want to do like sort of what I'm doing on YouTube or whatever, it's all based on, sort of creating a reputation for yourself. So I create digital products, a lot of which are tools for comic book artists, like digital brushes, templates, comic book fonts, all kinds of comic book tools that you can use to create comics. So in order to do that, in order to sell that, people have to know about it. Now, a lot of those, or the majority of those sales actually do come from, just because, the products are good and everything. And eventually I got in with some marketplaces, because there's a lot of different marketplaces that sell these digital products. And they'll run like specials, like some places will run like bundles, or they'll run special deals. So that's where a lot of the sales come from. Now, if I had a big enough audience where I could get the majority of people to buy them from me, because a lot of these companies, they'll take like a 50% cut.
Yeah.
So, which once you create this thing, it's a digital product. So even sometimes they'll run like crazy deals where I'm only getting a couple bucks sometimes, but it's weird because sometimes I'll make a couple bucks on one product, and the exact same product I can make 25 to, if I sell it on my own site, if you take out of the equation the amount of time it took me to create the product and everything, if I can sell it on my own site at full price, which I usually give a discount, but let's say I sell it at full price for $40. That's pretty much $40 straight to me, where sometimes people will run in that special. And the reason why I'm okay with that is because they're doing the marketing. The marketing is a big part of it. I don't have that marketing, so I'm willing to take less because I know that they're out there pushing it. They're kind of working for me, so I'm willing to take less even if it's the same product. But assuming that I can build a big enough audience, and I'm starting to do that. I mean, I do get sales on my website, and that's always good. That's the way I prefer it, if I could get it that way, because there's no middleman or anything like that. And that's part of the reasons why I do the videos, and I've done a course on how to make comics, because, and you gotta kind of be smart about it. I mean, I want to help people create better comics and everything. But when I do a YouTube video and I show this stuff, I use my own work as an example. And a lot of times what I'll do, I don't usually even use the paid versions, because I've got like a free version that you can go and get for free, and you can work on the stuff that I'm working on in my videos with my free tools. But in order to get those free tools, you have to sign up for my mailing list and everything. So right there, as long as people stay on my mailing list, and there's other ways you can do that by continuing to put out free stuff on your mailing list and things like that. But if you can get them to stay on there, then you're starting to build a fan base, or people that you can, send out newsletters and market your stuff to, but also give value. Like I always put like exclusive videos and tips and things in there. So hopefully people stay on that mailing list. So anyway, that's kind of one route where you build an audience on social media or whatever, and then you build products and you establish yourself as somebody who knows what they're talking about. And I've sort of done that with the Making Comics 101 series, so people know they can watch my series and this guy, I think he knows what he's talking about. I trust him, and he's giving me value for free on YouTube, so I'm willing to get back and purchase some of his products. So that's one answer to that question on the first thing. Now, everything I'm telling you, there's unfortunately a lot of people just want a quick, easy answer, and they're just hard to be. They really are. You've got to put in the work and building an audience. And there's a lot of people that do way better than me. I've been doing this for a while, and you can see, as long as I'm doing YouTube, I've seen people that just start on YouTube and they do way better. I mean, I've been at this you too, Jeremy. I mean, yeah, I've been pretty consistent though. I've in the 7 years or whatever I've been doing YouTube, there hasn't really been a week that's went by where I haven't posted a video. And then sometimes when I'm doing like the 100-day challenge, it's 5 videos a week. When I'm doing that one Making Comics 101 series, it was 3 videos a week. So theoretically, people could look at me and like, yeah, he's not doing too well. But I mean, everyone's different. Everyone's journey is different. Some people are just going to catch fire and just, go have a viral video or whatever. And then sometimes you just got to keep working on it. But even though I'm not like a massive YouTube sensation or whatever, I'm still able to kind of leverage my YouTube, and it does help me build somewhat of an audience. So building an audience is number one, that the first part of that question. But there's an entirely different route you can go, and that is and that doesn't really require any kind of an audience or any kind of reputation or anything like that. And that is what I'm sort of doing with these coloring books. And so there's a whole lot, there's all these different areas of passive income that you can do. Like the merch, selling work either on merch by Amazon, merch by Amazon, which is like t-shirts and things like that. And then there's a whole bunch of other ones, Redbubble, Society6, Threadless, the list goes on about all these different places where you can sell not only t-shirts, but anything from duvet covers to pop sockets to whatever. And again, it's the same thing with the YouTube. It's just, I have no idea why some of these things work. Like I got the same product on a lot of these sites, and some they don't sell at all, and some they sell great.
Yeah.
And if you talk to 5 different artists, some people say, yeah, Redbubble's the way to go. I sell tons of stuff on Redbubble. I don't sell hardly anything on Redbubble, but I sell stuff on like TeePublic. And somebody who has a lot of success on Redbubble may say, I haven't sold anything on TeePublic. So sometimes it's just a matter of like something catches on a certain platform. So even though it takes time, it helps if you get a design to put it on probably as many platforms as you can. But a lot of that isn't, I mean, and you can drive traffic to those products. You know, some of the things that I have done, I have driven traffic to through building an audience, but a lot of it is also SEO. And it's like with the coloring books, like I'm doing certain niches, and I don't talk about all of them because a lot of them are things that don't really jive with my brand. So I don't really mention it at all. You know, some of them are like more adult, and that's not really my brand. But like, for instance, so this isn't really my brand, but this is, we talked about the pug coloring book. So everyone loves dogs. Pugs are big on the internet. And it's niching down. It's not just creating a pug coloring book, but it's creating a hipster pug coloring book.
Yeah.
And I'll do another one. I'll probably do like a geek pugs or whatever, you know, combining things and really niching down to something very specific. So when people do a search, and you have to, and a lot of this is just the marketing. It's not, I mean, I try to put out a great product. And the key is, if you're an artist, a lot of the people that are really successful doing this, they aren't artists, they're marketers, and they're good at marketing. So they're making a lot of money, but they're just they're hiring people super cheap on Fiverr. The work isn't that great. So a lot of the products out there aren't great. So my goal, and you know, I'm just starting off in this, so my goal is to try to put out quality work. And also, you know, I've got an advantage. I can draw. I mean, I can draw better than, you know, people you're going to see on Fiverr, or, you know, whatever. So the work that's being out there, I know I can do better work, but that's unfortunately, that's kind of a small percentage. It really is getting it found, because you have the best work out there and people can't find it, then it's not going to sell. So I'm trying to, I think it's easier for an artist to learn how to learn the SEO, learn the keywords, learn how to market than it is for a marketer to learn how to draw. So that's kind of my goal with this thing, and we'll see where it goes. But I'm so far, the books that I put out there, and like with the marketers, what they do is it's like just throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and seeing if something sticks. So that what they'll do is a lot of what they call low content books, which is, you can do a sketchbook, which is pretty much blank pages, all right, and put a cover on it. So they'll do like, they'll be uploading like 30 sketchbooks a day with just these different cover images, and inside it's just all blank. And then, but chances are, if they're lucky, out of those 30, maybe they get one to sell. They probably won't even get any out of that 30, but the next day when they upload another 30, I mean, they got thousands of books up there, but it's just like, we're going to throw so much stuff out there, and eventually something might start selling.
So it's quantity instead of quality.
Yeah. Now, I mean, and a lot of people are making good money doing that, but everything they put out, and it's not even things they even know anything about. So if I'm going to put out a book, I at least want to educate myself a little bit on what it's about. And I want it to be something I either find fun to work on or whatever.
Yeah.
So I know a little bit about whatever that niche is, enough that I can identify with whatever that target customer is.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a pug, but I love dogs. I love animals, and I think pugs are funny. So that's kind of my angle with that.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I designed it, but the books that I put out there, even though it's a limited amount right now, and I might try to get, like, I do other books here. So going back to, I'm sorry if I'm all over the place, but.
Oh, no. This is good stuff. This is exactly the kind of I was hoping to have.
So this one I do kind of market myself also, and with keywords. And I've got a whole series. I mean, let's see if I can. All these books are kind of in this series. So I do, now these are more like along the lines.
Scott, before you do this way, can you show us those spine out towards the camera just so we can get a nice view of the
Yeah, this isn't all of them. There's more. Like, there's also manga sizes too.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
People, you guys got to get on this. He's literally giving you the play. He made the playbook to make comics.
So here's but this is what they call low content, because where the coloring book, all the pages are different. You know, it takes a long time to do a coloring book like this because every single page is different. Now, you also have to be smart about it, because this I could put this up and it may not sell, and then it's like, oh man, I put a lot of work into it. But what I can do is I can take something very similar, like this corgi book, and it's all the backgrounds are the same. I just kind of tweak the drawings of the bodies of most of the dogs are similar, so it's just a little bit of tweaking. So you want to, like we were talking about before with batching, you want to combine as much. You want to be smart about how you're doing stuff. How can I use whatever I'm drawing over and over again? Because I could also take this image with this caption. What is it? It says, I'm wearing this, hipster corgi. I'm wearing this collar ironically.
Yeah.
Okay? I can put that on. I can also take that same design and put it on a T-shirt. So you got to think about that, so you're not wasting your time. But, and again, I'm all over the place. So back to this. This is more low content, where every single pic. Now I do try to add a little more value, because there's other people that are doing this. They're selling more, but they're honestly they look like people that don't know anything about comics. But because they were early to market, and because people are they've got reviews, they're selling tons of them, more than I'm selling. But I can guarantee you that my books are probably on this subject, on making comics and stuff, better than pretty much anything you're going to find. So I put a little bit of content up front, like some ideas and things, and then that's repeated through most of those books. But then once you get into the bulk of the book, like this is just, all this is thumbnails. So if you want to design thumbnails, this whole book. So I design one page, and that's the whole book. So that's what you call low content. So this book doesn't take as long to make. So that's another kind of a route you can go. But the key to selling that, because this is sort of my brand, and I have branded it. This is similar to like my Making Comics 101 series. I can send sales to this, but with this one, since it's not really my brand, I don't really, I'm kind of if you see my brand, it's about comics and mad science and stuff like that. But the reason this sells is because the keywords that I put in it. So you got to do a lot of keyword research, and there's a lot. I know I'm throwing a lot of information out there, but there's tons of videos if you're thinking about getting into this. And there is a lot of upfront investment and time and everything, and learning how to do this. But the information is out there. If you just search like Amazon KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing, that's for the books, or Merch by Amazon, which is the T-shirts. There's tons of videos that'll show you how to do this. So anyway, but you got to learn the best keywords, and you got to niche down, because if you just put out, I've got tons of really cool artwork that I've designed. If I just put that on a T-shirt and put it out there, it's easy, as cool as it is, it's not going to sell. You've got to find what people are interested, what people are rabid about, what they're buying, and kind of target those specific niches. And then and make sure you put, when you're uploading it, you'll have the opportunity to put these different keywords, and you've got to do the keyword research. And there's a whole lot of other things, but because of that, I don't have to market this stuff. Once I get the right keywords, I put it up there, and if they start selling, then hopefully they'll continue to sell, and people find them, because Amazon, Google, these are huge. When people go to Amazon, they type in things, they're looking for gifts, they're looking for stuff like that. So they're typing in these keywords, and if you can get something that pops up in the results, they'll start to sell. So those are the two different ways, two different advices. Either build a brand and sell stuff to people, push people to your stuff, or you don't need to build a brand. You can just spend the time learning how to do the SEO and the keyword stuff, create a cool product, make sure it's got the right keywords in, and just put it up, and then people will start finding it.
Dude, I think that's so good. Like, one of the things I like to mention when you were talking about building your brand too was like, you have people watching videos, and you mentioned like, I am giving away some of this for free in exchange for them joining my mailing list. And it's like, that's just, in business, that's just called a loss leader, where it's like, it's almost like a free giveaway at like a
loss leader, lead magnet. There's a lot of different terms for it. But
But I mean, it's great, because it's like you're basically just being a good business for yourself, like in the sense of like, kind of doing the math and going like, this is a worthwhile exchange, because if people use this product, see that it's useful and get benefits from it, they in turn will want to invest in more because it's going to be beneficial for them. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, I know that. Like if somebody gives me something for free and I use it and it's beneficial to me, then I want to support them later. Like I had just done that. I was doing, what was I doing? Oh, I was creating some thumbnail images for another digital product that I'm working on, and I needed a photo of a kid. And, so I found this photo of this cute kid that was perfect, and it was free. It was on one of these free stock photo sites, but I'm like, this is going to help me. So, there was a donate button. So I gave the person money for the photo, even though technically I could have just took it for free. So, I mean, I think if you give value and people know that, they're going to want to support you.
They appreciate it. Yeah. I see a comment in the chat. My boy Negro Frazetta asked if you, Scott, can put a link in the chat for the Making Manga book.
Yeah, let me see where that link is. And there's a few of them. I mean, it's a whole series. So I think, I think I know where you can find it. Hold on, give me a you guys keep talking.
Yeah, we'll banter. But while Scott's looking for that, I can tell you he had another question, and Josh, you and I can talk about this a little bit, and then Scott can jump back in. But he was asking why we don't make online courses. Because there's a lot of artists making money selling courses online. He mentioned Peter Hahn, who's from art, who quit Art Center because he's now like selling his course for like a $600 class. And I know for me, teaching, I've just been slowly dipping my toe into it. And I think the reason for that is because I've spent so many years as a student that I don't necessarily. And for a long time, I didn't see the value of what I had to teach, or I didn't feel like I had enough expertise. So there's a bit of imposter syndrome there. But I think now, at the point where I've been doing it, I realize there's more besides just my expertise in comic book making that I can share.
Yeah.
So the first thing I'm doing for the first time, like I've been taking the discussions I've been having in my Patreon with my patrons, and them asking me questions about studying anatomy, studying figure drawing. Like the art book study group that I mentioned. And I realized there's things, just based on the questions they're asking, I can build a course around this is how I would answer that subject. And all it is just me making a video of me drawing through it and talking through it. So kind of the same as I do here on YouTube, where I'm just working on my comics and then answering questions while I'm working on them. I've realized I can show my personal process for how I answer these questions for myself. So that, and my goal, my plan is to make those things available to my patrons, but you use in a positive sense, use them as my beta readers. I make the video and I make the content, and they say, well, you know what, that did help, but it didn't answer this question. Or the thing that you explained here, it could be explained clearer, and make these things so that they're available for my patrons for free because they're helping me build a better course. And then take those courses and put them out maybe on Udemy, maybe on Skillshare, maybe on Gumroad. But I mean, I'm just starting to build my first one now. So him asking that question, it's like, yeah, this is my first time dipping into it. It's not ready yet, and I'm going to be building it. But so first off, that's another thing. I'm going to show my Patreon again. If people want to see me building my first course, you can subscribe to the Patreon and watch me build my first course. But then once that's ready, building it within and giving the benefits to the people that are already supporting me, the people that are supporting this channel, making this channel available to everyone else, because they're supporting it. And then just putting that out there as another form of revenue. And I think, honestly, Scott's already doing that with the Making Comics courses. It seemed to me like the videos were the loss leaders for the product.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can see a world in which there's a form of the videos that are a product unto themselves as opposed to a loss leader. I don't think that it is necessarily a one-size-fits-all solution. There's some people who might make, like when we talk about lead magnets, there's some people who just make cheat sheets for different skills, for learning how to draw this thing, or like you look at the Etherington brothers. They give away. You guys know the Etherington
Yeah.
brothers.
Oh yeah. I put it away, but I had it right here for the longest time in front of me. How to draw, how to think when you're drawing, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I've been planning to do a book based on my writing process for writing comics, and I have not been able. I've forced myself to not read any of their writing books because I don't want to sneak any of their content in there. So if I cover any of the same material, it's because it was in my head already. But I ordered the first one of the How to Think When You Write, but I'm not going to let myself read it until I finish my writing book.
Right, yeah.
But I mean, I just the fact that they give their content away for free on their blog, but it's such good content that people are like, I want it in an easy format that sits on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
So, first off, Scott, were you able to find the links if you want?
Yeah, I put it in there. It's also it's basically, oh, where did it go? It was I think it was Amazon.com/shop/Serkworks, SERKWORKS. But it's from there you can find some of my t-shirts, you can find my books and some tools that I use to draw, all that kind of stuff. So but I did put a link. I don't know if it's clickable. You might have to cut and paste it into your browser, but
you know what? I will put it into the link from here.
Here, let me paste it in for you so you don't have to retype it. I can paste it in our chat here. Okay, you got that?
Okay, yeah, I see it. Got it. All right, let me copy. Hang on, I'm going to paste it in my browser real quick first just to make sure that it works. And there's all of your beautiful content and your beautiful face up at the top. Books by Serkwork. All right, let me post this.
And the good thing is it's on Amazon, so if you order it, you get free shipping. Unlike, unfortunately, my store, you can get free shipping on my store because I'm not Amazon. So, but that, just to let you guys know, that's a good selling point if you can get your stuff on Amazon, because that's how a lot of people shop, for better or for worse, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Like even on my my website, I have it set up so that for all of my books, I have a link in the description, so that my face is covering Josh's face. I'm like, how rude. No, but I include a link to the Amazon store on the page where people can buy my books, because I honestly do prefer people to order it from Amazon, only because I don't have to go into my the closet where I keep all my books and open them up, pull them out, pack them, ship them. If I were shipping out packages on a daily, it probably wouldn't be a big deal. But that goes back to the whole having a process set up. Yeah. Whereas, I may only be selling a book a month from home. But that's also because I'm driving people to order the books from Amazon, so that way they take care of all the fulfillment. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to ship anything. It makes life easier for me, and I feel like a heel because I'm putting a knife in the back of direct market retailers each time I drive people to an Amazon book, to Amazon. But I have yet to find a proper solution to that, because I haven't really pushed into the direct market hard, because I don't publish frequently enough to necessarily make it profitable for retailers to carry my book. If they have the choice between carrying an indie creator who's putting out books 4 times a year versus somebody who puts out a book once a year or once every other year, they're going to take the person who's doing it 4 times a year, just because that repeatability is what the direct market's built around. It's built around the repeat customer, come back every Wednesday. What's new? Where's the creator I'm looking for? If you can't get monthly, bi-monthly. You can't do bi-monthly, quarterly. There's quarterly stories. But as long as you've got some method to get people to come back to the comic shop, I feel like that's my duty as a creator, is to figure out how to get my product, to make a product that is worth the retailer's time. It's not like the retailers are against indie creators. Most of the retailers I talk to love indie creators.
Yeah.
But for me, it's more of, how can I make my product a product that will make them money? And so for now, I've been sticking with Amazon because it has the lowest amount of friction for somebody who isn't making comics full time.
Yeah. And I just think the idea of having systems where you don't have to be the warehouse and
Yes.
shipping and fulfillment. If that's not kind of your jam, like the profit margin is going to be lower, but at the end of the day, like your time is worth money as well. And so like for me, the only real like massive success I've had in passive income is in t-shirts and in posters and stuff. And that's mainly like a mix of like good luck and then some good concepts like early on in my career where when Threadless was kind of at the peak of internet, I had some pretty big wins on Threadless. And so because of that, when Society 6 started, they were initially just poaching alumni from Threadless, like people who had won the design competitions on Threadless and having us offer prints. And so I have a pretty large following on Society 6, but it's like literally just kind of an accidental thing because we were kind of on the ground floor with that. And so I still generate passive income from that. But one of the things I love about that is I just get a check every once in a while for sales that I've had nothing to do. Like I haven't had to even promote or market. They just sell because they're on Threadless or they sell because they're on Society 6 and they have a high ranking. So like if you can be in a scenario where you don't have to like print the shirt and do all of that extra stuff, it's a good thing, you know?
No, I agree. Although I'll push back on you in that it wasn't luck. It was well, no. What they say is luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah.
So you already had the preparation and the opportunity arose. So you didn't get lucky. You did the work, and then the opportunity presented itself to capitalize on it.
Yeah, and I think like much like what Scott's talking about, it's like it's not like I just hopped on Threadless and started doing the competitions. I did a lot of I think I did that first and saw no success because I did a terrible t-shirt design. I had to like really sit and learn how to do t-shirt design, how to effectively do a design that doesn't just look like an iron-on or where the border like actually in it. Hopefully there is no border, but if you are going to have a border, it should integrate with the t-shirt color. You start learning about like Scott was talking about, like niching down, where it's like, you need to speak to an audience and you need to create something that says something about somebody's identity. Because especially if they're not buying your shirt because it says Nike, right? Because people tend to wear t-shirts for like two reasons. Like one is to represent a brand that they really love. And the other is mainly like fashion. Well, I guess there's three reasons: fashion, representing a brand they love, or representing an idea that they think conveys something about their own personality. So if you're doing like a humor t-shirt, the low end humor t-shirts, like I like beer, like the higher end t-shirt says something a little more specific about that beer. Like one of my favorite designs I did related to beer was like a stein that then also became Albert Einstein's head. So beer drinkers who think they're smart are going to buy that shirt because it's an Einstein, right?
I buy that shirt.
Yeah, and it wasn't like high end, but it's like having a concept that makes people stop, think, and have an aha moment. It is like the name of the game with t-shirts. And whether that's like a really high-end aha moment or it's like a pun that makes people think and then laugh for a second, that's the kind of thing somebody is going to buy a shirt for and wear it for because they like that response when they wear it out. And somebody goes, oh, that's funny. Like they see the shirt and they have that moment. It's like a way to project your identity. So like, doing the practice and learning how to do that, learning how to work with minimal color, learning the process of screen printing and stuff like that, like those are all work that went into that luck. The luck was just the timing of being on Threadless and active in that community when so many of the artists that, that kind of made t-shirt design their living were kind of present there. So it was like, there was kind of an energy of that group of artists that, and to this day, it's weird. I thought for a second that Hot Topic had stolen one of my designs. No, they didn't. They just licensed it through Threadless. So like my designs are in retail right now in multiple retail stores that like I didn't do any work to get to. It's just a design that succeeded and then has just had a life of its own. And like that's kind of what you're hoping for when you're building passive income. And that like the cool thing is a lot of that groundwork stuff I did like 10 years ago, but I still get residual checks from. And so like building that, like what Scott's doing, it's fun to watch because it's like I know just from past work of building passive income, like I still get passive income from, like I said, 10, 15 years ago from the hard work I did back then. And so like what Scott's doing now, it's like 10 years from now, Scott's going to be looking back at this and some of these digital products are just going to be moving without much effort on his end with passive income just coming in. And like it, you know, if it's diversified enough, that can be really nice and build a career. So I think that's just a really cool thing. And like the areas that he's exploring, like I've never explored. And so I think it's pretty exciting to kind of see that. On the teaching thing you were mentioning, I've taught illustration and graphic design at like the college level. And occasionally I've been tempted to like, if I were going to teach, I'd probably go the route of like teaching at local colleges. But adjuncting, the pay just is brutal. And frankly, like online courses, the pay is kind of brutal for teaching. So like, it's one of the reasons I don't explore it too much. I think if I were to do online teaching, I'd go exactly the route that Scott's going, where I do like, you know, videos that are, you know, somewhat tutorials, somewhat like just explaining the process for people and kind of teaching them that process. And then just kind of using that to build a fan base that would then feel interested in like exchanging value for value. Mm-hmm. But I don't like, I don't know about online courses, like whether I want to do them because just and maybe I'm wrong, but like most people I know have done them, like talked about the pay from it, and it's like compared it to what you get like adjuncting, it's lower than that. And adjuncting, when you break it down, you're making like less than you make at McDonald's.
Wow.
For like, it sounds really good because you know if you look at like an adjunct position, usually it'll say something like it's like $80 an hour. It's like that's good money, you know, but when you break it down, you're not really getting $80 an hour. You're getting like a certain amount per unit, and it's really like I really enjoy teaching when I've done it. But at the peak of me teaching at an art school, I was teaching like 4 courses, you know, a semester, and it was untenable because I was having to turn down clients who like for one job would pay me what I'm getting paid for the semester for a class that I have to go to every single week to instruct kids. And it's like, I love the process of mentoring students, but it's like, it's one of those like business things of like, it has to make business sense. And like, Jeremy, like much like you, it's like, you know, I have like a day thing doing art. And so when I get home, it's like the time I want to invest is going to be in personal projects and creating art. And if like the day stuff or like the freelance stuff starts kind of cutting too much into my ability to like create art that I think is good that's outside of commerce, like I feel like I have to kind of draw a line or a distinction between the two. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it makes.
What Scott's doing is the way to go if you're going to do online instruction, because at least you're getting the value, giving the value, and then also building a fan base, you know, which will support your personal projects.
Yeah, but there's also I'm considering also doing some sort of a premium version of that, because like I said, with the free stuff, I put out, at first I was like, well, I put out everything for free. So, I mean, what do I have left? But then I thought, well, I could maybe do a course where you get some personal interaction, or take on students or whatever. And I think if you're doing that yourself and you're not, it's not through like a university or something like that. I think it is more profitable. I mean, I know, I've heard so many success stories that people do courses and things like that. There's also, I think I could probably go deeper. Like for instance, just, each one of those episodes was, at the most, 30 minutes.
Mhm.
So just take, for instance, lettering, comic book lettering. I could do way more information and kind of, because in my videos, I kind of talk a lot about stuff, but all that stuff requires you to do a little more, to go deeper and practice and stuff.
Yeah.
So if I integrate some of the practicing and that sort of teaching, have students or whatever, that is something that I think I could transition into sort of a course. So that's definitely not out of the question. That's something I'm considering, but.
Yeah, and that's pretty smart. I mean, like one of the things I think is so strong about those comics videos you made is the fact that you managed to, like, the thing that boggles my mind, and part of why I haven't done anything like that is the investment you put into making those videos, because you took a lot of like heavy information, like, and a lot of like deep industry secrets and just a lot of like very valuable information, and then you condensed it on some really key topics to where it wasn't like, a 3-hour video each subject, which is actually hard to do because it's so, you cover so much and it's so comprehensive. So like, to me, I think that's one of the strengths, but you're right. Like if I'm one of those people watching those, like the 30-minute video and I'm like, but I want to dig in deeper. Like if you can provide an avenue for people to go, like that's not a bad call either, Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and the fact that you already have the mailing list set up, and you're collecting, signups. That's one of those things where you can just start adding tags in there and saying, like, people have comments or want to go deeper. You can start building up a list specifically for people that want to go deeper in your course, into the content from the making comics 101, and the people who want to go deeper into that, that's your market for a course.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly don't see. I don't see it as an either or when it comes to a video course, a workbook, or doing as the product, or doing worksheets as freebies and doing videos as freebies. I think that it can work with either. It can work either or. Like I think one of my most popular YouTube videos was me breaking down my writing process. So I'm using that as the backbone for my book about my comic book writing process. But that said, I'm gonna have a lot of content that comes from like what I've done since making the first issue that is built around. Tons of thumbnails. I mean, it's more about outlining comics, but a lot of it is the writing and the thumbnails, which is to me is the visual writing of it.
Yeah.
But I look at the fact that I can go and take that video and make it into a book that's a sellable product. And then based on making that book, I can come back and based on the feedback of that and how that does, I can say, all right, now I'm going to make a video course that's different from the free video I did.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make it like a feedback loop.
That is so.
Yeah, that's smart that you're taking the video, the content that got the most, eyes on it, the kind of the most popular content, and that's what you're sort of basing what you're going to do for some premium content based on that. That's same thing with me, like, because I talk a lot about it. I talk about a lot of different things on YouTube, mostly about being a better artist, how to make money, art, and everything. But the majority of the content that people cared about the most was the comic book stuff. So that's why I kind of doubled down and created that. That series and everything, and why a lot of the products that I develop are centered around comic books. Plus, it's niche enough. There have been so many digital brushes out there and so many fonts and things. But all this stuff, but when you start doing something for a specific audience, then you can do a little better, and you can set up yourself as somebody who's an authority in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a weird question too, because we like the Artcasters and 48-hour Art Check and a lot of our YouTube channels and stuff are catering to artists, and we speak to kind of like art and processes of art, tips for illustrators, graphic designers, cartoonists, that kind of thing. Do you guys have any ideas on like branching beyond marketing the artist? You know?
Yeah,
That's the conundrum I find like often is like when I'm promoting comics, most people do it like that are into comics are creating indie comics. So how do you kind of bridge the divide and like try to like market to like a literary audience or like, you know, let's say your comic has to do with sports, like how do you get it outside of cartoonists but to sports fans? To me, like I just was curious, like if you guys have thoughts on that and like in that area, because that's something I'm thinking about a lot. Where I'm like, I think how I can also branch beyond just speaking to other artists, you know.
Yeah, I think it's the find a way to have a little bit of a crossover appeal. Like you'll see a lot of stuff that goes super viral that artists do. Is stuff that the average person, not necessarily the artist, but for whatever reason they're fascinated by. Like for instance, like a lot of stuff that does really well are just portraits that look like real people. Even though to me, I look at that and like, well, I just assume have a photograph. I mean, it's cool that you can duplicate a portrait that looks just like a person, but to me, that's not that impressive.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say in every case.
It's difficult, but it's not necessarily. It doesn't inspire you to create.
Right. To me, I want to see things that couldn't be done with a photograph or whatever. But the average person, when you can draw something that looks so realistic that it could be a photograph, that just blows people's minds. So that stuff does really well as far as viral or anything, any kind of, if you can find a way to take your artwork and do something different with it, like stuff like if you create portraits using Legos, like people will build different Legos or anything like that. You can use some weird medium or anything that's out of the ordinary that a person who's not necessarily an artist, who's just an average person can relate to, can see that and be amazed by it. That's the stuff that's going to go super viral. So I don't do a lot of that. I should probably, and I may start doing some more stuff like that. But I mean, if you, just look at like a channel like Jazza's channel. I mean, he does art, but then he'll do crazy stuff with it or whatever. And some of it gets a little clickbaity and everything, but he definitely, if you're just going for marketing, you just want to, I mean, you can't argue with the guy's success. So, I mean, I used to like more of his old content where he, it was before he kind of discovered all the art challenges and stuff. But I mean,
you recently did a video about that.
Yeah, I did see that. But,
and I liked it because I thought it was very open and vulnerable in a way that when we're creators online, sometimes, just letting people behind the scenes of, yes, I'm not just one thing. And yes, I'm trying stuff out. And some of it is stuff I like. And some of it I'm trying because the market says it's good. And some of it I'm doing. And I don't know how it's going to be received, and even if it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So, that vulnerability. But on the specific question about reaching beyond the niche, well, first off, in listening to other podcasts about writing in general, I've heard conversations about the fact that if your main audience, and people have mentioned this process for fiction writers and nonfiction writers, where their main audience ends up being other people that are writers.
Yeah.
And they're like, how do I get to the readers? And the first answer I'd heard was, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a large readership that are the readers that are the writers, because writers read more than the average person.
It's true.
Regardless, like if you're an indie comic creator, first off, comic fans consume a lot of comics. Comic creators consume a lot. I mean, you get your cranky Howard Chaykin's who are like, I don't want to read any of this crap. And I love Howard Chaykin. I know he just has no interest in reading any comics, but I think that the same thing is true for indie comic creators. Indie comic creators are some of the largest consumers of comics.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily a bad thing, and then those are the people who exist as tastemakers in the lives of non-comic readers.
Yeah, that's true.
Think about it. When someone in your social circle wants to know, well, what's a new good graphic novel for my 12-year-old daughter? What's a good graphic novel for this teenager who's into fighter jets and wants to go to the Air Force Academy? All the people in life who have other interests, when they want to find a comic book, they come to you.
Yeah.
You're the tastemaker for that because they just come to you. And even if it's, for me, more often than not, I don't read as many comics as I would like, only because I'm spending time either reading fiction to make myself a better writer, or I'm reading for research. So I'm not necessarily, that's why I rotate between stuff for education, stuff that is going to make me a better writer, and then I still try to fit in, I'm reading this just because I want to read it. Like I just finished reading like Love and Rockets, The Death of Speedy, because for so many years I've heard people talking about that particular volume. So I'm like, I got to read this, and I'm reading it for me. I'm not reading it for education. I'm just reading it because I want to read this great story. My point being is that regardless of your niche, if you are somebody who is being read by a lot of indie creators and you're in a topic that person's looking for, you'll be high on that list of recommendations. Now, that's a pretty low recommendation engine. That's one of those where it's like, that's like a 0.5% open rate in terms of like a newsletter.
Yeah.
In the larger sense, in terms of something that has higher returns, there's reaching out to communities that are non-comic readers, but are about the topics that you're interested in. So, I mean, the fact that Quarterly Stories is about faith and mental illness, reaching out to communities that either communities that deal with personal faith, but then have a sub forum or a sub thing in their Facebook group where they talk about mental illness issues, or talking about mental illness issues and finding subgroups that talk about religion and mental illness. And the idea of finding the people and then not finding the people, and this stuff, this is where you get to the part that which is you don't just come in and spam them. It's not like you just come in and seagull people. It's like you come in and you start, lurking in it, and then responding to comments and asking questions and becoming part of that community. And that is where I can tell you that I've seen other people do it, and I will say that it definitely works. I have been negligent in doing it because most of my social media time is just me posting my work, my visual work, on all the people that are already following me. I haven't spent as much time. It's almost like I've been spending a lot of time building my own community at the neglect of joining and participating in other people's communities. And I think that both are very, very important, and including, like in this case, participating in non-artist communities, but just participating in communities that are dealing with issues that are important to me, or issues that the work that I'm doing is about. And then once you're actually having conversations with those people and you're part of those communities, you're existing in this, that's the point when you may mention, hey, so I made this piece of art about this thing. You may just share an image from it. Or you may, ask people for their thoughts or feedback. Just ask them, hey, take a look at this. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, because like Scott deals a lot with like science geek stuff too. Like that's a huge part of his brand, and like we've talked about that occasionally, like the idea of like, I mean, obviously this is off the table now because of COVID, but it's like, going to like a science convention and like seeing how like, you could sell prints there and kind of get people to access your work, or like, just trying to kind of broaden beyond just like the average scope, like of and I shouldn't say average, it's just the scope I think we're familiar with, which is like, I know how to talk to other artists, and I know a lot of advice to give other artists, because I think we've all worked professionally for long enough where what we have to say about the industry can be useful, especially for people like getting in, or like people who are struggling. But and I think that's valuable to feed that. But at the same time, like I do want to, for my own marketing and stuff, like start also branching. Like maybe it is a matter of like making the time of being like, I'm gonna spend 20 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day on like branching beyond my little, like my crew, like my group, our community, and kind of like branching out a little bit into other communities. That might be, I don't know, it's just a thought, but I think of like one of the things I know on a personal level I need to work on marketing my own work with is that outer, broader audience, you know? I don't know if that makes sense, but.
No, it does make sense. I was chuckling because I saw one of the guys in the chat, Negro Frazetta, said, "I got an idea. Draw comics while blindfolding. While blindfolded. If the drawing is good, it will go viral."
Yeah.
You know what? I bet first off, whenever I hear an idea, my first thing is to Google it, because I honestly believe most of the ideas that we think are unique and precious, someone's already done it.
Yeah, totally.
So more often than not, and that doesn't mean don't do the idea. It means look at what other people have done. It's like knowing your art history or your illustration history. Look at what people have done so you can bring something unique and new to it. But I guarantee, when this is over, I'm going to go look up drawing blindfolded. I promise you there are multiple videos about it.
It's already been done. Actually, that's a huge part of the game of t-shirt design and illustration, and honestly, like also what Scott's doing too with these branded products. It's like one of the best things when you're trying to conceptualize is exactly what you described. Where if you think of something where you're like, man, like somebody should do this, and no one's doing it, that's a really good sign that you should do whatever that is. Like if you really sincerely just get that gut feeling, like that's just obvious, somebody must have done it, and then you look and like nobody's done it, or somebody's done it but they've done it really poorly, that's a good sign to like, hey, that might be the next t-shirt design you should do, or illustration you should do, or YouTube video you should do. But it is kind of a shame. Like I empathize and agree with Scott on, like, I do love the ability to draw like a very realistic portrait of someone, you know, but like I always feel like, unfortunately, that is definitely that area of like I'm trying to think of an artist that most people I know who don't like art like revere. Salvador Dali. There we go. Salvador Dali is a good one.
I was going to say Thomas Kincaid. I am not a fan of this way. I respect his skill level. Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of Thomas Kincaid. But see, that's the thing. But he is somebody who is beloved.
Oh yeah.
Actually, you know what? No, I'll tell you somebody who's beloved and who I highly respect is that artist Weiland, the nature and oceanography artist.
Yeah, I kind of can't help but like him because I my alma mater's in Long Beach, and there's that big Long Beach aquarium thing.
Stomping grounds.
Yeah, but Dali to me is a good example because like I think a lot of artists see what he contributed to art, but as somebody who's like painted with oils and learned how to do like wet on wet and a lot of like kind of advanced techniques with oil, even though I barely ever use it anymore, it's like when I look at a Dali painting, I'm not like blown away by the color palette. Like it's kind of dull colors, and it's a juvenile use of color, and I don't mean that as an insult. It just is. It's like to lighten things, he just mixes white, and to darken things, he mixes black, and that's like base level value making in painting. Where it's like when you start getting into like real color theory in painting, you start mixing complements to get these weird grays and browns that like are these cool colors, and you start playing with what the color and the shadow is. And his paintings don't go to that level. Now, conceptually, they're interesting, but my point is, most people would look at those paintings and be like, that's the epitome and peak of painting if they haven't painted in oils. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like, it is hard to balance it because it's like, like, do we want to be gimmick painters, doing like I'm going to do a portrait upside down that I've practiced a million times, or maybe I've just covered it in gesso, and then I'm going to cover like I'm going to just wash off the gesso and have a already dried painting underneath, which I totally clean that.
That is brilliant. That's smooth. I would love to.
Oh, look, it's a beautiful portrait. How did I do that? It's cool to watch. It's a cool visual, but like, do we all want to do that? Like, just to get views? Or so that's a hard one to navigate too. Where it's like, there's a lot of gimmicks that are cool, but like, are we gimmick artists? Like that's the hard part too, right? Where it's
Well,
like, yeah,
there was something I wanted to throw in there just before we got too far away from the topic, because you also mentioned how Scott was spending up time engaging in the science community and science geek stuff, and now conventions being gone. But I realized that the same way that we've seen a confluence of online comic conventions over the past few months, over the summer during what would be our normal convention season, we're not the only industry that's doing that. Science industries are doing that. Car aficionados are doing that. I mean, I know a comic that's a Western. I'm sure there's probably some online Western conventions.
Yeah.
I don't know what the content is like for those groups, because we know that with comics, it's pretty straightforward. We share art. We talk with artists. We talk with writers. We talk about the process and the characters that we love. But I mean, in science, it's very easy. The same symposiums and lectures that they would give online. I mean, I could see those as almost being an improvement, having them an online thing, because now you're not it's not Hall H for those things. Everyone's just got a great seat. And you're just sitting there and you put an intimate lecture by someone who's an expert in their field. And I think that the same way of finding those finding those Facebook groups and those online forums and communities on topics that are related to our indie comic, I think that finding conventions, online virtual conventions about those topics can work as well.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that I would say I truly regret not taking advantage of during the convention season, during the years I've been doing conventions, is paneling. I maybe have been on probably 4 or 5 panels in like the 10 plus years I've been self-publishing. I've only been on a handful of panels. And I realized that in the back of my mind, I just wanted, once I wrap up the last issue of this book I'm working on, what I was going to do was come up with a panel that is like a course. Like the same way you would give somebody a lecture, not a course, but the same way you would give somebody a tutorial on YouTube to create a lecture I could give at conventions, and really not even bother tabling anymore. Just go to conventions, come in, give my talk, and then be like, I would still table, but I'd say, here's my talk. You can buy my stuff online. You can buy books based on this topic that I just gave you. But I mean, it makes sense to have a table, because I can say, if you want to see more or hear more, you can come to my table and buy. But I feel like that would be a great thing to take advantage of, in terms of I'm providing that direct service to people. I'm teaching them something. I'm giving them something that's useful in person. Like, that's even more powerful than doing it online the way we do it here. But the fact that if there's virtual conventions, who's to say those virtual conventions don't have lectures and workshops? And I feel like it would be a long stretch to go to a topic that is not comic related, but they're having a convention or an online symposium.
Yeah.
And say, I'm an artist who does work about this topic. Is there a way I can participate in your event? That might be something where, depending on the topic and depending on the organizers, they might jump on and say, oh my God, that's a new great twist. We never thought about it. We've never had an artist involved before. We love it. There might be some people who you would just get ghosted and hear nothing. There might be some people who would be like, I don't know, submit us a proposal, and maybe you're involved in the community for a few years before they decide, yes, we actually do want to have you here on a panel. It could go a whole different way. But living in this post-COVID-19 world, I mean, I don't think that in-person events are never coming back.
Yeah.
But I think that it's going to be, first off, when they do come back, they're going to be different for a long while, for at least a year or so. And then once things do get back to normal, I think that spending a year of social distancing and interacting with people online is going to change in the fact that these virtual events, what they lose in the in-person touch, they gain in having the capacity to reach more people and the ease of interacting with people.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen so many comic luminaries doing so many more online panels and more live streams and conversations with people in the past 3 months than I've seen in years, because they're not on the road anymore. They're at home. All of that time, the packing and the traveling and all the stuff, they're like, they can just hang out on people, getting invited onto people's YouTube channels, talk for a while, and then say, yeah, and you want to buy a commission from me, go to my site or go to my art dealer.
Yeah. That's really, I also like what you mentioned, like, just thinking about like the Western angle too. It's like, we have a couple Western museums in LA area too. And it might be worth just kind of reaching out and being like, hey, can I do some workshops at the museum? I draw Westerns. It's like the Gene Autry, dude. I mean, we should be, I'm also thinking about for myself too, but it's like, I think sometimes that kind of outside the box thing might actually help. One thing I was thinking about pre-COVID, and I still am going to consider post-COVID, like whenever we get a vaccine or whatever it is that fixes this, it was the idea of like even selling, graphic novels at like bars and at, like approaching it more like an independently published book, where you do bookstore readings and like try to kind of make it more of like a rock and roll approach to marketing it, because like if you think about it, like like there is a broad audience that likes to read books, like for Scott too, it's like there's a huge B film convention scene and like people are obsessed with zombie films. There's horror conventions and stuff like that. Not that like Young and Dead is not necessarily a horror convention type thing,
but it is a zombie book. Yeah.
There's also YA conventions for librarians, so it's like there's areas like that I want to kind of personally like look into. I know like one of the best sales shows I've ever had was back in Portland, and I'm gonna forget the name of it, but it was called like Word something. Wordstock. And Wordstock's like this giant convention that they'd have in Portland that was just for authors. So they'd have like Stephen King come and like all these big writers would show up. But as a cartoonist, you could show up and sell books. And what's weird is I sold more books at a book convention than I ever saw sell at a comic convention. And part of it's because the people who were there to buy books. Like they were there to meet authors. They weren't there to meet like the celebrity who was the guest star on like this sci-fi show like 20 years ago. They were literally book nerds. And I actually like, I'm just saying like that opened my mind a little bit to like why, like for me as a cartoonist, like whenever I have a book to sell again, I should open my mind to like the possibility of doing literary conventions, not just, and like you were saying, like with Westerns, like there's a massive, amount of people who are really into Western art and cowboys and like that whole realm of like storytelling. So it is kind of interesting to think like, what other than just comics can we kind of sell our comics to? It's the advantage of the spinner rack back in the day. Like most of us found comics. Like my first comics that I bought were at a 7-Eleven. Because I was like, yeah, Spider-Man seems cool. I want to see what this Spider-Man thing is, and it's only so much money, so I'm going to check it out. That's not a comic shop. That's outside of a comic shop that got a lot of people to go to comic shops. So maybe, like, I don't know, it's just a thought, but that's something I'm going to think about a lot with marketing my work is trying to find other angles than just comics,
I wish that we had this conversation like 4 years ago when I finished the first volume. I would totally have reached out to the Autry Museum and asked to do a workshop about making comics.
I didn't think of that till now, and I was like, "Oh crap, that's a really good angle,"
I thank you for that suggestion. I know that you're going to use it for yourself too, but I'm like, why did I not? And I mean, who knows? Maybe there's serious imposter syndrome there for me because I've gone to the it's not Artists of the West, but it's something. The name is similar to that, but they have an annual exhibition that they have there, and the caliber of work there, like I don't think I've drawn anything in my life that holds a candle to any of the pieces in there. Like it's just an amazing exhibition. So there's a part of me that says, do I have any business teaching anybody anything here? I mean, not that I would be teaching the artist, but just when you look at the caliber of that work and you come over to me over here, I'm like, here's my comic, and like, let me show you how to draw panels and story. It just, there's some huge imposter syndrome there that I think I would need to get over and just make the ask, show my work, and either they're excited about it and say, yes, we'd love to have you, and or could you do something that that focuses on these aspects of the West because I could tailor it to them.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
like that's the catch is like you could say like, here's what I'll bring to the table. You have a lot of artists coming here. They're doing like these brilliant paintings, maybe some like Hollywood backdrop artists and stuff. But like I can come in, do a workshop that's going to engage like middle school students, and like they're going to be way into it because it's comics, and comics to kids, and just show them YA sales numbers, and then then you have an in, or I'm just spitballing, but it's like that's something you can literally do, like offer for like I'll come in one day out of the week for a month, and then in your scheduling, it's not a bad idea because like often like museums are looking for ways to kind of get outside of the box and like engage with pop culture. And so it's like if I were doing like a comic, like a good example, if I were doing a comic that took place underwater, right? Maybe I could hit up aquariums.
Long Beach Aquarium is amazing.
Yeah, so I think that and like with Scott, like science museums and stuff, it's not a bad. I don't know what the return would be on that, but it's an outside the box thing that doesn't rely on a convention schedule.
Yeah. I mean, and in the end, there's a lot of stuff that we do that doesn't have upfront financial benefits, and that's I think a big limiter for doing outreach. Is we're like, well, I don't have the time to do something if it's not paying me.
Yeah,
I think that outreach is more than just marketing. It is marketing. But I think that, like, for instance, I think about the fact that I don't give back to the artist community and to the community at large as much as I would like to. Yeah. And people will say, well, then just start participating. And I'm like, yeah, but I got to do this. I got to do that. Like, it comes back to the same old, why I don't have enough time to do this stuff for my own business.
Yeah.
Like, doing stuff for other people just to make the world a better place. It feels like something everyone should do. And I feel guilty for not doing it, but I still have the same old excuses why I'm not. I mean, something like doing an event at the Autry, I think that's one of those where just the fact that it kind of looks good on the CV
exactly
that's enough of a personal benefit that I could say, all right, I'm going to pour my energy into something that's not going to pay me, but will hopefully awaken a love for comics in kids that maybe never read comics before, or maybe awaken people that love Western culture. Because that's the thing. I also don't come from my interest in Westerns comes from just loving Clint Eastwood movies when I was a kid. Yeah. It's not like I grew up in a suburb of LA. I didn't grow up in the Southwest. I didn't grow up in New Mexico. I didn't grow up in Arizona or Texas. So for me, it's as much a two-way street of learning. Like my trips to the Autry Museum, I've gone a few times, and it was for research. Yeah. Aside from going for that exhibition, I was going there and taking photographs and taking notes and taking sketches for reference for my Western comics. So I mean,
I've gone there for reference of just old, like weird, like awesome, like toys and packaging that I can then reference for like retro looking art, because it's but you're right, like it why not? Like why not? And also like just as an example, like Javier Hernandez, who's a friend of mine.
Javi, Uncle Javi.
We all know Jav, but it's like he started he was one of the founders of the Latino Comics Festival, and he initially started it in like Long Beach at the Museum of Latin American Art in Long Beach, and just kind of came to them and was like, we could do a comic show like that is Latin American artists in comics. And like him doing that was for the community. I don't think he was thinking of like self-promotion or anything like that. I think he was just like, there's a large swath of cartoonists who are overlooked, that are in a minority, that we could highlight through this show. And through doing that, like, it has benefited his career as well. And like, partially because just the connections that he made through organizing and getting a show like that together, it's like he's now branded with that comics expo. And it's like, I think that so that kind of like giving, and then like, once again, it looks good on a CV, but it also builds like rapport with people and kind of associates you with something good. So I'm excited about that thought, but I am bummed that like it may not be open for a long time.
Yeah, that's. I mean, we'll have to. I should probably look and see what kind of virtual events these different organizations are doing, because maybe there's a way I can start participating there. I see a question in the chat, and then after that, I have a question that's a writing process question. But I wanted to just mention that because we've been going for an hour 40, and we've been for a while. I know time flies when you're just hanging out and making stuff. So the question from the chat, and then my question, and then we'll wrap things up, because I know you guys have your lives to get back to, and art to make, and things to promote. So the question in the chat, Negro Frazetta again, he saw, would you guys ever consider turning your comics into an indie animation? Which I know Jim Lujan, you guys also know. I mean, he is amazing. Like, he's a one-man animation studio.
Yeah.
I would never dream of being able to do that, because I've done animations on my own. And even with using Flash and cycling and creating digital puppets where I can just have the mouth flap and tweening the movements, it took me, it takes so long. Takes a lot of time. So I'm not saying that I think it's a bad idea. I'm saying I look at somebody like Jim Lujan, I'm like, if I could work like he, and Corey also. Well, wait, Josh, you've been doing animation, so that right there. I'm gonna shut up and let you guys talk about it, because I know Corey's been doing it. You've been doing it. We know Jim Lujan's been doing it. Tell us about what you have been doing with animation.
So I'm doing like the most limited, and just from dipping into it, because I had never really. Like, I did a little bit of Flash animation back when, like, that was, because there was an era in time when you were like in graphic design where it's like you have to know Flash or there's no work, you know. So I played with Flash and kind of built some websites and stuff using it, but I had never really fully animated anything. And then Corey, because he's so into After Effects, just kind of lit the fire for me. So I've been using, like, I did a 10-song album that I wrote and did all the music for and stuff like that, called The Bottle of Better Then, and then like released it on all digital platforms and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to use this as a template to learn a little bit of animation, like limited animation. What all can I make? So I'm making music videos for each song, and I've had to put that on hold because I had the joy of that most of us artists get, where I've had some major hand issues. And so like tomorrow, and it's on my action script hand. So luckily it's not on my drawing hand. But when you do animation, you're using a lot of action scripts. So I have had to put that on pause. Until tomorrow, I'm getting my cortisone shot. So hopefully I'm good to go after that. But anyhow, yeah, the process is brutal, and it's fun and addictive. But like, I've done it at the base level where I'm not doing like syncing mouth movements, and I'm not doing a ton of like traditional animation where there's a lot of in between frames. It's more just like movements that are mapped, so it's not as complex. When I see what Jim does, the output that he has and the output that Corey has, and like that they're using audio with synced lip movements and stuff, it blows my mind, like the output that they have. Because if I wanted to do 2 panels of my comic, it would take me, probably a week to make those panels move and have like mouth motion, speaking and stuff. So it's like that's part of the thing. If I could have someone else animate my comics, I'd be all about it. Like, if I could have someone else like take my frames and make them keyframes and do all the in-betweening. But it's a pain just to get a 2-minute video is a real challenge. And I mean, you can check them out on my YouTube video, on my YouTube channel under my name here. But it's like, it's just yeah. I mean, well, like you said, you've dipped into it, and it's like it's a ton of work. And much like cartooning, I've always joked that animators are the only artists that are crazier than cartoonists. We're insane. Like, we're insane enough to be like, I'm going to draw this same character, 300,000 times in every feasible, angle and a bunch of different environments that I have to draw. And I'm going to come up with costumes and lighting. And I'm going to, if we take it a step further because we like create our own comics. So we're also going to be a screenwriter. We're going to be the whole film crew. But the patience of animators to like do all of the detail and then also be like, I'm not just going to do those panels. I'm going to do like 50 laborious steps between those panels. It's mind-boggling. I hats off to people who can do it. I might try as I get a better hold on it. But I feel like the only thing I can use for animation now is just like fun things, and then professionally, like it's a beneficial thing. Like I've done it professionally at my job, for like convention videos and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. Hats off to people who can do that whole beautiful animation. The Jim Luhans of the world out there are remarkable, and sadly, it's also a very similarly difficult hustle to comics, where it's like there's not as many people out there doing indie animation, but indie animators, have very similar struggles, very similar frustrations, where you meet animators and usually what they want to talk about is their indie animation, not what they're doing professionally.
Oh yeah.
It's very much like cartoonists, where it's like you can get hired to do a comic, and you don't want to talk about that comic. You want to talk about the comic you're doing at home. So I don't know, Scott. Like, what's your kind of take on the animation? Did you ever?
I think it's kind of similar to what you said. Even though you are doing some animation, but for me, I'd love to see that as long as I don't have to do it. I used to do animation and. It's just not. Well, it's kind of weird coming from a comic book artist saying that's just not financially realistic, because comics in most cases aren't either. But yeah, animation is just I just don't. It's just too much. And not that I'm against work either, but yeah, it's just not what I want to do. But I would love to see it. So
yeah, I think that it's the fact that it's whatever medium or process you find most creatively fulfilling is the process that it makes sense to pursue a project in. Like when I tried, the reason why I went into start doing indie animation is I was taking animation classes in college as electives, because they didn't have like an undergrad animation program. Nice. And I started realizing, much like you said, Josh, I started getting freelance gigs where they were just looking for anyone who had any animation background at all. And if you knew the bare basics of Flash, you could get a job. And so that's what, paid work. So I was able to do that. And then when I realized that, the comics industry was challenging in terms of the number of positions working at mainstream comics, so existing paying, not self-published work, was limited, I thought, well, maybe I'll just make animation. And in the process of me making the animation, I realized, okay, this takes longer for me to do than making the comic. And what I was interested in, it was that I took a story that I had intended to do as a short comic book and said, I'm going to make a short film about this. And at the time I realized, I could have finished this short story in a third of the time it took me to make the animation. And that's when I realized what was more important to me was telling the story, not so much being an animator. Because when I look at people who do indie animation, I just look at it as that they love that medium. They love that process.
Yeah.
For me, I have friends who are comic makers who are thinking about becoming novelists because they feel like they can tell stories quicker. Now, I'm not talking about comic writers. I'm talking about comic artists who are like, I can get my vision out quicker in prose than I can in making a comic. So I think I'm going to looking into becoming a novelist, starting to write prose novels. And it's because I guess the day-to-day process, there's times, you know how it is. As much as we love making comics, it can be a grind.
Oh, yeah.
Stick with it, because that actual act of making the comic is the thing you find fulfilling. For animators, the thing that they find telling the story through frame-by-frame storytelling, that's fulfilling for them. For novelists, it can be prose. I mean, I've even found for myself, sometimes if I have a very complicated idea for a single image, a painting or an art idea, instead of breaking out my sketchbook and doing a bunch of sketches, I will write down in prose, I'll write an outline for the painting. I will write down the things I'm thinking, the emotional content I want the piece to have, different visual symbols I have, notes of things I need to look up in visual reference for. Because I can write out in words much quicker what I see in my head faster than, because if you start sketching, I'm like, well, no, that's not it. And this is it. Well, the composition's off. You start doing hours and hours of thumbnails.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that anyway. But for instant, just getting the idea down quickly, I can sit down and in 5 minutes of writing, I can capture an hour's worth of thumbnailing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. Like, it's funny. So I finished the scripts. It took me about, a month to write the script for the next quarterly stories book. It's probably going to take a little under a year to thumbnail the whole thing. And then it's probably going to take maybe a year to 2 years to finish the pages for it. So it's like, that gives you a window. And I kind of write my script in a very like prose type way, especially because this particular story, anybody familiar with it, it's like a first person narrative. So it's got a lot of narration in it. And so a lot of the description is written. It could work as a prose story. But it is interesting, like the time involved. And yet why I stick with comics is because like my favorite art, like that I envision myself creating, tends to be comics. Like my favorite cartoonist is Chris Ware, and Chris Ware sometimes dips into animation. But what I love about Chris Ware is like I could never imagine a movie version of like his most famous book, Jimmy Corrigan, Smartest Kid on Earth. Like that couldn't be a movie. If they made a movie, it would be a terrible movie. It's a perfect like art piece on its own, and it can't be adapted. Like, and to me, like I once again, I don't hate money, so I wouldn't be against somebody adapting something I made to film. Great, Yeah, I'm happy. But the point being, like, I do kind of aspire to hopefully make comics that work perfectly as comics and wouldn't work as effectively as other things. And I think that's what we're all trying to do. Like, we all love comics, and it's like I like the most recent interpretation of Spider-Man, but the Spider-Man I grew up with that I read in comics, like the Ditko stuff, like that's the stuff that I'm always going to remember as Spider-Man, because it's like those were the best tellings of it, in my opinion. And that's that's why I agree with you. You got to kind of go with what you're passionate about, because that's going to be what drives you when it gets hard. Like, cartooning's not easy. Writing novels isn't easy. I have a lot of friends who do it. And as I'm starting to get in this whole literary agent world, I'm starting to see a lot of the back work that goes into a book and getting it to a publisher. And it's a lot of work. Animation, very similar. Like, if you want to be an indie animator and you're doing pitches a lot, like forming a pitch is a nightmare. Like, getting that packet together, having all those elevator meetings where it's a lot of promises are given that are never fulfilled. It's very typical, like Jeremy sees this a lot too, because we're in the LA area, so it's like we know people who do screenwriting and do pitches, and like that's their day job, and it's a headache. So like, what's going to get you through those hard points is the passion for the final product, and I agree. I haven't awoken that passion yet for animation that will get me through those hurdles. Like, I'm interested in it enough to kind of dabble, but I'm not like full bore committed like I am with comic, where it's like, with comics I can be like, I'm going to commit 5 years to this. Okay, cool. That's what it's going to take. That's what I commit, because I love comics, and it gets me through like the third year in, where I'm like, have I really spent 3 years on this thing? It's like, oh yeah, I love comics. That's why I'm doing it. So that's the thing. Like, pick the thing you love. Like, if you love comics, make comics.
Yeah.
But I do love the stories of like animators, like the guy. I'm forgetting the director. He's like one of the primary directors on The Mandalorian, but he actually started as an animator, and then now is like a feature film director, and that's an interesting transition.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Tim Burton started out as a Disney animator.
Yeah, that's right.
In fact, speaking of working for studios, Negro Frazetta, what I tell you is, if you're interested in working in animation, indie or otherwise, the best thing you can do is get an internship at an animation studio. Because I found for anything, whether it's working in games, working in animation, working for any company, you learn 10 times more as an intern at that company than you do in any program teaching you what you're supposed to do there. I mean, and sometimes sometimes you may learn, oh, I actually don't want this job. And that's a good, believe it or not, learning what you don't like is just as important as learning what you do like. Yeah. And I'm of the mindset, let me put it this way. I think internships are so valuable that even if you aren't in a full-time program, it might be worth enrolling in a program for 1 semester just so you can be a student, to take an internship at a company you want to work at that company, make the contacts you need to find out what they want out of someone in the portfolio. And then hopefully after a semester, maybe you're like, hey, I've decided, hey, I want to, you just be honest with them. Tell them, I enrolled in school so I can get an internship here. Yeah. What entry-level job can you train me for in the time that I'm here, so when I'm done, I can quit that program and start working for you? Because I don't want to be at that school. I want to be here for you. I don't have the skills yet. I'm willing to put in the work to learn them. Just come in like that. I mean, businesses, for all creative people, I think, working in the work environment is the absolute best teacher.
Okay, so really good question. I think he's asking about, is it possible to send your comics to a Hollywood producer? Yes, but here's the catch. You generally want to go with an agent. So like I'm I'm working on a side project with my sister on a script she wrote, and we're going to make a graphic novel of it, but the agent that we're working with envisions that we'll most likely be able to get a movie deal for it, and they think that it's best for us to actually develop it as a graphic novel in order to get it as a movie deal. And it hasn't been made yet, so we're at like the rough stage and the script stage. But the catch is, my literary agent has contacts with other agents that are in Hollywood that can arrange direct meetings. So I would really recommend, like, if you're trying to get through that pitch cycle, it's either you move to LA and you start hustling, and like Jeremy said, like get internships and work at the studios. It's a lot easier to have access to pitches in the studios if you're working in the studios. But also like when you're dealing with publishers that are outside of comics, or you're dealing with film, you're going to need an agent. And it sucks, but you need an agent. If the agent's asking you to pay them, they're not a real agent. If they're asking for a cut of the deal that you get, then now you're talking like a more legitimate agent. Because there are a lot of sham agents that I'm sure Jeremy's heard about too.
Oh yeah,
in LA, and it's like there are some people who literally make their living as paid agents, like where the artists are paying them to be their agent, and that's not necessarily a good deal unless they're getting their pay on the back end, like an 8% or however many points of your film credit, whatever it is. They're sifting a little bit off of their due diligence of getting you those meetings and getting you those deals. So that's kind of the best bet. I mean, I know Jim does a lot of meetings, but Jim has the advantage of having made his name in indie animation, and so there's a lot of animators that are geeks for Jim's work, like they love his work, and so because of that, and because Jim is a really good, just a good person, and like all three of us know Jim, and we could be in different states, and we probably would know Jim. He's just like a really great guy, and he hustles and knows everyone. So with him, I don't know if he needs an agent. I think he just gets asked to do pitches, and ends up in scenarios where he can. And so like there's multiple ways. Like one is you build your reputation. Like you have a best-selling comic that might give you producer deals, right?
Well, he mentioned The Walking Dead, and he said how did The Walking Dead get on TV? The Walking Dead got on TV because it was already a best-selling comic book beforehand. That's how it got on TV.
Yeah.
And let us not forget that Image was ready to cancel it. I know they were ready to cancel Invincible at a certain point, but I think Walking Dead, I might be speaking out of turn. I've heard Kirkman give interviews on it, and I think that it was that Walking Dead, he had to beg to let them get to like issue 8, because I think they were going to cancel it after issue 4 or 5. It might be Invincible that I'm thinking of, and not The Walking Dead. But I know that for both of them, they had, just to get to the point of the success that made them able to be developed in other media, they had to beg to get past that initial first 4 or 5 issues where nobody gives a damn.
Yeah. And actually that's a great point too. But I mean, like, once again, I don't think they would have quite gotten the deal they got without having had so much success with the comic in general. So it's like, I have heard of people getting like film deals based on comics. They don't happen as often as they did when people were first kind of really pumped about anything comic related, because they were like, this is the new boom. But now that you're competing with Marvel and DC for those pitches where they're like dealing with properties that they know are sure sales, like you don't have to sell like that a Wonder Woman movie is going to get people going to it. Like Wonder Woman is a property that's at every Walmart, right? You don't have to do a lot of promotion to be like, hey, it's a Wonder Woman movie. But yeah, I agree. I think like just you have to advocate and promote the hell out of your comic before kind of getting to that route. And like I said, also, if you're not like a commodity, you're not like a name that they're going to be like, oh, this person wants to book a meeting, let's drop everything because this person's really well known. If you're not there, then having an agent is really important because they've established those relationships. So,
yeah, they can get you in those rooms with the quote unquote gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Well, so we're really running long here. Let me get the last question I wanted to ask here before we wrap up, which was, and this goes back to literary agents and developing quarterly stories, developing your other projects. What was it like working with an editor? And I asked from the standpoint of someone who I very much feel like an editor would make my work better, but I'm not in the position where I'm going through a major publisher. Yeah. So, I mean, I've thought about the fact of just reaching out to some indie comic editors and saying, what are your rates for editing a comic? And maybe try working on them with a one-shot and just say, I haven't, like, building a relationship with someone, or maybe trying a few different editors and just seeing what the relationship is like and how it improves it. Because I do believe that having a second eye on your work or a third eye on your work will help you make it better. I believe that editors perform a very valuable function in comics, but I feel like a lot of indie creators aren't necessarily in the position to take advantage of them. So I'm curious to hear how it impacted your work in thinking about maybe I need to just save up and like that's an expense that I just need to work into my budget to have to find somebody to start editing my work?
So I'm in a lucky position because, for one thing, like when I was first working on quarterly stories, I had like this email back and forth going with Diana Schutz of Dark Horse.
Mm-hmm.
I met through conventions and had given her some of my indie stuff, and then she and I like started an email exchange kind of thing. And so for like, I would just send her stuff and she would give me great advice back. And it wasn't like and the catch there was I wasn't doing it with like the angle of like, and then Dark Horse will publish me. This is when she was still working at Dark Horse.
Mm-hmm.
But so I was getting this free, beautiful advice from a person who edited Frank Miller, like, huge. Like, that was a huge thing. But also, I think some indie artists might burn that opportunity by not seeing it for what it's worth. It's like a person who loves comics who's really effective at what they do. Like, she edited Dave Sim, Cerebrus, like, before they had a falling out. She has like, Concrete is pretty much like a collaboration with her.
Paul Chadwick?
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of her relatives is married to Paul Chadwick. And but she's actually like a character in Concrete is based off of her, and so it's like this is a person who's taking their time to give me feedback as a young cartoonist who's new to the industry, and give me feedback on how to make my story better, not necessarily on who's going to publish it, because like I said, memoir is a hard angle, and so like even her take on it was like, this is beautiful, but I don't know how it's going to get out because it's it's memoir. It's hard to find publishers who's willing. But so that was helpful. That started me off. I also just am lucky in that, like, my sister was a senior editor at a newspaper entertainment section for like 15 years. And so she's excellent at just cutting through the BS and being like, and catching grammatical errors or plot holes that aren't filled and stuff like that. And that's any work I do. I send it to one of my two sisters who are both English majors and writers, and they do it for free. So there's the catch. And what was nice was when I got approached by this literary agent, that was also just kind of a weird happenstantial thing where I have a really good friend who writes professionally a lot. Like, he's a writer, not a cartoonist. And he writes like spots for like the Atlantic and a lot of big newspapers, and also has written a couple novels. And I was just curious because I really do want to try to find a publisher if I can for it before self-publishing, and I want to exhaust that option before I self-publish. And I just put on Facebook, like, anyone have any suggestions of like publishers I might not be considering to submit this to? And my friend, who's that writer, retweeted it, and within like 5 minutes, I had an offer from a literary agent to represent me for this book. And so what was neat was kind of going into it, there wasn't a ton of revision needed on the script because they were in love with it. They were just like, no, this needs to get published. There were a couple like honest feedback things where it was like, if we could change this, that would be good. And they weren't major plot things. They were just like, there's a couple weird phrasings and stuff. And so it's just revising. But it's kind of like getting a crit for art where it's like, it's valuable because sometimes you just screw that hand off and you need to know, like before like you kind of put it out in the public and people are going to see that. So it's like that kind of feedback. But with when generating the second script, I worked with my literary agent and then also the same circle, not Diana anymore. I don't have that contact anymore. I enjoyed it while I had it, and I'm kind of still cordial, but I'm not going to exploit that contact. But it's like I go through the same editing process of having those trusted friends, and I encourage every cartoonist, especially creator-owned cartoonists, to get a circle of friends. Like, Jim is actually one of them too. Like Jim Lujan, Ken Mora, like a lot of that crew, like have looked through my work and given me tips and suggestions and stuff. And it's like it's great to to get that feedback when you're at the script stage before you get to thumbnails and all that, because you can revise it and make it better. So this plot, yeah, I went through that channel and then submitted it to my literary agent. There was a lot of back and forth. One of the biggest changes in the script was I had a female character that had no depth.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like losing the Bechdel rule. And that's something I want to know. And I got that feedback, just like, I don't know if this character is fully fleshed out. Here's some suggestions. And then I threw in like, well, what if I did this? And then we kind of worked through it. And it's kind of like a lot of back and forth. But I think it depends on who's editing. But I definitely tend to think like getting the standpoint of somebody who reviews scripts and novels and writing all the time, and so they can catch like common errors quicker. I think that's invaluable. So, but the neat thing is, if you have a good literary agent, a lot of the time the agent will also be an editor, and so they kind of help you prep it so that when you send it to a real editor, there's less like red flags, you know. But yeah, it's kind of similar to working with like an art director or something. Like the best art directors are going to be kind of guiding you to make the best thing you can make, and not like trying to make a mini themselves. And similarly, I think the best editors aren't going to be trying to change the purpose or structure of your story, just kind of refine it and get it closer to finish. But I look for it, you know. I think you can find like, just think about your literary friends, like who are people you know who have like an English degree and are nerds about writing, and then just buy them beer. You know, do what you do to help you move to a new place. You know, where it's like, hey, you know what? How about I buy you some food? I'll buy you dinner for a week if you just take the time to like look over this script or this, you know, and give me tips. But I would say like. That's new for this comic. In the past, I didn't do that, and I had pretty weak scripts. And it took me a wake-up call where I was like, why am I treating my own stories like with worse consideration than I did like writing an essay in school? Because like whenever I was in school and I'd write an essay, I'd have someone else look at it and read through it and see if it was nonsense or if it needed improvement. And then it always got better when I got feedback, right? But it's like once I started writing my own personal stuff, and I had just taken that out of the equation, adding it back in, I think, has made my writing a lot stronger. And so, like, I definitely recommend that. Like, if you're ever writing something, give it to a trusted person. Tell them to take the glove off. Be like, don't be fragile with it. I need real feedback, you know. And then prep because you're gonna get stuff back that like hurts, you know.
Yeah, I definitely heard that in just listening to podcasts about writing, that like that feedback stage is, you know, that their job is to show you this is what's going to make it good, and what's going to make it good sometimes is going to be a gut punch, or you know, this is just our fragile egos. Like no one likes to be told things are wrong with what we made, even though that is often our own inner monologue.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's just painful to have somebody see the thing that you already knew was there, but for some reason didn't fix.
And the most helpful thing about it too is it's a second pair of eyes. So like anybody who's worked in graphic design or illustration knows that like having stuff go to print without someone to overlook it, no matter who it is, just a second person, is usually when you end up with like this beautiful typography and a misspelling. Because you've been staring at a screen for so long, you become incapable of kind of separating from it and being able to see something anyone else on the planet would see because you've just been living with it. So it's like that with story, where my favorite editing that I've gotten back are just logical questions. Like, well, why did they do that? Or like, oh, there's a dog in this scene. Is that this dog? And you're like, oh, like if they're asking it, I'm not telling it right, you know. And like that's a great thing too, where it's like a lot of the time it's just a question any reader would have, like you'd have if you were watching a TV show and you're like, wait, where'd that guy come from? Like, I've never seen that. Now they're in the scene. Like, now they're an important fundamental part of the plot, and they've never succeeded earlier in the story. So it's like those kind. I'm rambling, but that's been the most helpful thing. Like the page I'm thumbnailing right now is this kind of really in-depth story about when I was younger, like kind of going to a hospital, and it's very brutal, like retelling of my father's death and stuff. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't in the original script. The original script kind of hinted at it, and when that was an editing tip where it was like, I don't really feel the relationship there. Like, I don't understand the significance of this. You need to get more into it and give detail. And so it took a lot of back and forth to get to fleshing it out so that when the reader's reading it, hopefully they'll have more of a connection to that scene than just like, and how are you? I guess to finish it off, I'd just say like the best thing is they usually help you with a lot of the show versus tell stuff that we struggle with. Where it's like often we'll be telling more than we're showing, and we're working in a visual medium, so we can be showing more than we're telling. So rambling, but yeah, I can't speak highly enough of editors. It's super helpful.
All right, good. Well, that is a great note for us to wrap up on. This was really fun, and it was nice because it was like just hanging out, talking, drawing. That's usually what I like to do. So again, for those listening, Josh and Scott run the Artcasters live stream. It runs on both of their YouTube channels, alternates every other week. Links to both of their channels are in the description for this video, as well as for their newsletter when they give people a notification a half hour before they go live. So is there anything else, guys, that you want to point people at? Scott, is there anything that you want to direct people at in addition to your channel?
Yeah, just on my channel, if you guys are interested in creating comics, there's a whole series. It's like 69 videos, so tons of information there. And it's called Making Comics 101. It's everything you need to know about how to make comics, everything from coming up with the idea all the way to printing it, publishing it, marketing it, and everything in between. So yeah, that's probably where I would tell people to go and check that out.
Awesome. Right. And Josh, anything else that you'd like to direct people at? I mean, obviously you've got a new album that just dropped.
Yeah, so if you're into rock and roll and kind of like folk, indie folk music, you can check out The Bottle of Better Than. That's on like iTunes, Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, all of that. So check it out. Check it out on Spotify first for free if you like it, like pick it up. And that's under my name. And then other than that, just, all the links to my social media and stuff are on joshuakemble.com. And thanks for having us, Jeremy. It's awesome, man. Fun to chat and get some work done.
Well, it was a pleasure having you guys. I mean, it's always fun every time I get to talk to you guys. So I'm glad that we did it again this close together. Now we can just keep it from not being every few years.
Yeah.
We get together and chat. So I need to, and I feel I hold a lot of responsibility on that because I'm really bad at just keeping my head down and disappearing. So I'm glad you guys were able to make it. I appreciate having you on. I'm thank you for sharing so much of your knowledge and your experience with my audience. Hopefully they will all find it beneficial. And again, for anyone who's watching, these videos are made possible by my Patreon subscribers. Amar in the chat, Negro Frazetta, they're helping bring these videos to you. So thank them for that. And if you would like to participate as well, and like I said, an additional bonus live stream once a month. I'll be sharing my online courses there first before anywhere else. You can go to patreon.com/GERIMI. You can sign up for my newsletter where you can get all of my social media posts collected for you in one place once a month. That is newsletter.jeremy.net. And you can purchase physical comics of my comics, or if you read digitally, you can get them on Amazon Kindle or Comixology at amazon.jeremy.net. That's it for now. Go be creative.